Areena.
Hello and welcome to a special election edition of All Points North. I am Ronan Browne, and joining me here in the studio to discuss the key issues around Finland's municipal and county council elections are Sam Spilsbury. Welcome, Sam. Lucia Vuelman. Thank you. And Ran Blomgrund. You're all very welcome. So as I said, this is a special edition of All Points North. So it is also available to view on Yle Areena. And that means that when a graphic comes up here on screen for our Areena viewers, I will also try and describe it for our podcast listeners. Okay, but before we get into the discussion, a quick word about each of our guests. So Lucia is an Italian living in Finland for 8 years, currently working as an international relations coordinator and career counsellor at Turku University of Applied Sciences, helping internationals with their projects and their ideas.
Yes.
Okay, very good. And Ran is an NGO professional working for intercultural families in Finland through Familia RU. He has a background in political science and has been active for many years in promoting political participation among immigrants in Finland.
Thank you, yes.
Okay, and Sam. Sam is a data scientist who moved to Finland in 2018 to complete a master's degree in computer science, and he has been active in the community here, especially on matters related to international workers.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all very much. Okay, but just before we get into the conversation, I wanted to provide a quick summary for our listeners and our viewers of what we're actually going to be talking about here today. So Finland is holding 2 separate elections this month, one to elect municipal councillors and the other to elect county councillors who will sit on the board of so-called wellbeing services counties, essentially regional healthcare authorities. And these elections really do matter because these municipal councillors and county councillors have a lot of say and a lot of power over everyday life here in Finland. And that includes everything from schools to employment services to healthcare to buses, libraries, sports facilities, you name it. So your vote does matter, and even if you're not a Finnish citizen, there is a very high chance that you are eligible to vote in these elections because EU citizens who have lived in Finland for 51 days or more are eligible to vote, and for people from other parts of the world, that period of residence is 2 years. That's not the case for presidential or parliamentary elections, but it is the case in these local and regional elections. Okay, so now that that's all out of the way, how about a quick warm-up question for each of our guests? So, Lucia first, in about 20 seconds or less, what do you think is the main issue on people's minds?
I think that the current economy is on people's mind, and especially the highly unemployment rate of the youth especially is about 20%, 19.1. So I think this is a big matter of concern.
Yeah. Ran?
Well, I think that the economy or the unemployment situation is always on people's mind and always in every elections. I think what's special about this election, what's on people's mind is confusion. And why I say that because both the voters are confused because there are 2 elections at the same time, and people can be candidates for both in like different numbers. And then also the municipalities, the people who actually run, are confused because they deal with issues that they never dealt with before. It will be very new to them, and this, to my opinion, will lead to a lot of confusion and chaos after the elections for some time.
Okay, let's see. Sam?
To some extent, the municipal and county elections are also a partial referendum on how the performance of the national government is doing, considering that we see the same parties in these elections. And so therefore, I think the performance of the national government is also going to weigh a lot on people's minds when they come to vote in these elections too.
Okay, some very good answers there. And to find out what exactly is on voters' minds, I went along to an English language debate in the Iso Omena Library in Espoo to hear what they had to say.
For me, I think it's unemployment of highly skilled immigrants. I think the city should do more than sending people to language schools. A lot of people have finished the language schools and still don't have jobs, and a lot of people are leaving.
Well, I think people are just concerned about how they manage their everyday life. How is, for instance, housing, and if I think about, well, I think employment-related issues, there is a lot of unemployment, and now that it's municipal's responsibility, I think that's a big issue to tackle.
So for me, as of now, probably my main issue is related to public services such as transportation and in general all of these services when it comes to facilitating the inclusion of migrants. But if I had to choose one specific one, it would probably be rent.
Being an international student in Finland, I think one of the challenges that we as international student community face is the transition from the studies to the working life and how the city, through its services, can support us in that transition.
We as foreigners can be actually useful in Finnish society and like economy as well, like how they can integrate us and how we can contribute like in a win-to-win situation. Yeah.
I came here to this event to get to know more about the candidates because I feel like I lack information about the municipality elections.
Okay, so we heard kind of some similar topics there and a few different ones, but I thought it was especially interesting at the end, the answer about not really getting enough information about these municipal elections, something, Ran, you alluded to there. Because this really does seem to be an issue that foreigners in Finland are disconnected from the political process, it would seem. And we see this in evidence by the turnout among voter communities. So we're going to show a graphic up here on screen. Just describe it. That graphic shows the turnout rate in the previous municipal election, which was in 2021. The turnout was a rate of about 55% among Finnish citizens, which itself is actually quite low, but it was just 19% among the foreign communities. That's about 1 in 5 people who turned out to vote in elections that, as we said, affect everyday life. So, Ran, if I come to you first, why do you think that turnout is so low among the foreigner community?
I think there's several levels to it. One is, first of all, the level of knowledge of the system, knowing that you are allowed to vote, and then after that knowing that who to vote, because if you don't know the parties, you don't know the candidates, it might be that you know that you can vote, but you don't necessarily know who to vote. And then, of course, it might be that all of this is okay for you, but you feel that you are not connected to the system, that you feel that this is not for you, that you feel isolated from Finnish society. So all of these eventually lead people not to vote. And then there is the aspect, of course, that voting is always low among people from lower socio-economic and education. And then people always think, when we talk in English about immigrants, we sometimes think about these educated expats. But the fact is that there are so many immigrants with lower education or lower socio-economic situation, and those people, by definition, vote less. One last word I would say about this is that they said that the most common strong predictor of whether people vote or not and to whom is whether the parents vote. And that's obviously for immigrants, no parent, most of them, the parents did not vote in Finland or did not vote at all if their country is country that voting doesn't matter really.
Yeah. Sam and Lucia, I saw you both nodding along there at times. So Sam, if I start with you, what are you seeing in your own circles about this?
Yeah, so I think one thing which you pointed out there, which was quite interesting, was about sort of the feeling of inclusion and seeing yourself in the process. I mean, obviously, the statistics that you showed were for the last municipal elections. I think one very important change that has happened since then and now is the diversity of candidates that are running in these elections has also changed. So I guess probably for the listeners as well, just to know that not only can foreign residents vote in these elections, but anyone who's eligible to vote is also eligible to stand in the election. And at least anecdotally, what I've seen is that this time around in the elections, there's a significantly higher rate of diverse candidates who are running within the parties. That's also because the parties themselves have set up chapters which are specifically trying to reach out to immigrant background folks in order to run in these elections. So I think that, when you see people who are like yourself, people who have a similar background to yourself, who are in the posters on the streets, you feel as though this is a process that also includes you.
Yeah. But, Lucia, what's your take?
Yeah, I agree that the first matter is sense of belonging. So if you don't feel that you belong to the society, then you don't feel that the rush to make a change in the society. And what Sam was saying, that actually now the people that are interested into politics, they do the switch to to run instead of only voting. So the majority of candidates now, they actually realize that they can be part of the system, being voting themselves. So belonging, and then of course we already talked about the language barrier.
Yeah.
Most of the people don't really understand what's going on. They don't follow Finnish politics, and the other source of outlet is in English. Not all the foreigners are well educated and understand the English language to be having a good understanding of what's going on. So I think those are the issues that we agree all on.
Okay, yeah. And Ran, you were involved in actually arranging that event that I went to. Are you seeing more of an interest or an increasing interest among people going to these events and wanting to know more?
Definitely. I would say mostly among at least I can see it among the educated or English-speaking immigrants. You see it, for example, typically we are all on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, all of a sudden, ever since the election in 2023, where with the let's call them harsh measures against immigrants. There's so much increase in posting about Finnish politics. I used to say that immigrants thought that Finnish politics is about alcohol rules and moose population management. But now people understand, okay, Finnish politics affects my life a lot. Yeah. So if we can say one thing that good that came from the harsh measures of the government is that people are more aware of Finnish politics and how it affects them, but they understand that they need to be involved.
Yeah, political engagement. We're just going to show another graphic here before we move on from this section. Now, this graphic shows how immigration and net immigration has increased in Finland since the early 1990s, and there has been a very sharp rise in the past 5 years to decade. So coming to you, Lucia, with all of this in mind, immigration is increasing. There is this disconnect. So what do you think that needs to be done to kind of bridge this gap between the people who come here and Finnish politics and even, for example, Finnish society?
I think that the harsh truth is that Finland needs immigration because soon the aging population, Finnish don't make enough kids. So if Finnish people want to retire someday and have their pension paid, so immigration is a sour medicine that's needing to be taken into account. So the measure should be actually to welcome immigration, and it was the previous government was doing with the talent boost initiatives, a lot of measure to welcome immigration, and this graphic is the results of those measures. Of course, good marketing, because the happiest country in the world, a good healthcare, good education system is an attractive for foreigners to come to work in Finland. But now we need to put in place all the measures to retain this immigration. So, and I really don't agree on doing the measure of the good immigrant and the bad immigrants. So we only want highly educated, skilled immigrants, but we don't want the rest. So we should be a welcoming country, because at the end of the day, research says that all immigrants come here in Finland and they want to work. And they come to work and they pay taxes. So they want to become part of the system. It's very exceptions that they come to make exploitation of the system, like some party want to portray foreigners.
Indeed. Sam, last word to you on this section. What's your take on this?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things which, people love to talk about numbers. I think one of the interesting things that has happened, if you kind of dig deeper into the statistics, is that the character of arrivals into Finland has changed quite significantly in the last few years. So, typically, when people hear the word immigration, do they think of sort of the asylum seekers that came in 2015? Do they think of the groups that came before that? If you look at the statistics these days, the vast majority of migration into Finland is actually to satisfy labor demand. So this is basically that people are looking for people to work in jobs, and they're recruiting from overseas because they can't find the people in order to do those jobs locally. So I think that this is also like something that is that has like a large impact, I think, on like sort of how people will perceive these things in the future once these sort of changes become more apparent.
Yeah. We're going to move on from this section, but we're staying very much in the jobs theme, because this, as we've heard on the panel and in the Vox Pop that we did in Espoo, that employment is very much on people's minds as they go to cast their ballots. And this election is coming at a very interesting time, because the responsibility for providing employment services shifted at the beginning of this year from the state to the municipalities. And of course, Finland is seeing the unemployment rate climb higher and higher. It's now 9.4% according to the latest statistics. And there has also been a huge drop in the number of available positions being advertised by potential employers. So, Lucia, if I come to you first, how would you briefly describe Finland's employment situation at the moment?
Well, it's not the most bright situation at the moment. Unemployment rate is skyrocketing, and I don't see any measure to do something concrete to stop this trend. Every 6 months they promise that the economy is getting better. Every 6 months they they push the barrier over and over. So it is not a very bright future. But I think that shifting the problem of integrating a job from the central government to the municipalities, and at the same time cutting those fundings, it is very unreasonable and realistic. So you want to integrate people, look for their jobs, but you don't give any resources to the municipality to actually do something concrete. Yeah. So I would really like what the person in charge of migration in the city of Helsinki said. Do you think that those migrants learn themselves Finnish, watching themselves at the mirror, and then surprisingly they find a job? So. Yeah.
Ran, what do you think, especially about this aspect of how much municipalities can actually influence this if it's coming from the state and the restrictions and the budget cuts?
Well, they can influence in that sense that, first of all, of course, as we say, that this is right now in their hands. But the other thing is that they can put power, they can put pressure if needed. The municipalities in Finland are united in certain organizations, and they have by themselves certain lobbying power against the government. So I would say that they can influence, and one thing that I would say that for sure that they have to influence is working harder on changing certain professions in Finland so they will become more attractive, because we have right now the situation that a lot of people are educated and unemployed, but at the same time there's a lot of jobs that require a lot of people, and then the pay is bad and the conditions are bad, and these professions are usually, they're actually, to my opinion, like they are the heart of the society. They are needed so hard, so there has to be a certain change to allow people also live respectfully in these positions, in these professions.
Healthcare workers, for example.
Yeah, nurses.
Yeah, okay. We're going to take a question now from the All Points North audience. Shreyas Ramachandran Srinivasan sent us in this video.
According to the Ministry of Employment and Economic Affairs, it takes about 15 and a half months on average for an unemployed job seeker to get employed. With the 3 or 6 month rule becoming a law in April 2025, that leaves about 11 or 13-month delta or gap for international job seekers. I have lived this. I had my residence permit organically coming to an end in 3 months when my position at a previous workplace was made redundant. I can tell you that this short deadline causes anxiety both for me as well as the company looking to hire me. How do we avoid driving away international skilled talent from Finland if this is the case?
Okay, Shreyas, thank you very much for that question. He's referring, of course, to the law that's supposed to come into force quite soon, that somebody who's moved here from abroad and has lost their job has a period of 3 months or 6 months to get another job. Otherwise, they may face, well, essentially deportation. But Sam, I know you've been involved in this area. What's your answer to Shreyas' question?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess first thing to say about this is that it is a matter of national policy. And so, of course, this isn't something that we can directly vote upon in these elections. I think the most important thing that can be done on the municipal level is to ensure that if people are in a position where they lose their employment, that they can find new employment quickly. Right. I mean, I think this is the happy case for everyone that would be involved. And so then I think, like on this point of the employment services moving into the control of the municipalities, what I've actually seen from this is that the municipalities have a lot of very good ideas about how these employment services can be run and how they can actually connect people with work much more effectively. I mean, if we look at the way in which the employment services were run previously, they were run on a national level. And because they were run on a national level, they didn't have a understanding of the sort of dynamics of the local labor markets. They didn't have an understanding of the different types of jobs that people might be able to do. And often what was happening is that, if someone had an immigrant-related background, they applied as an unemployed job seeker, they'd be kind of grouped into this one bucket of all the unemployed immigrant job seekers, right? And then basically we say, okay, well, all these credentials which you have from overseas, all this experience you have from overseas, well, it's not really worth anything. We're just going to put you into this Finnish course. Well, you're not going to learn a sufficient amount of language skills within 3 or 6 months, right? So I think that it's now imperative upon the municipalities such that, the funding is actually available for them to be able to work quickly to connect people who, if they do lose their position due to a corporate bankruptcy or due to layoffs that happen in their company, that people are able to find new work quickly.
Yeah. Ran, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually wanted to. It's kind of related to what both of you said. When we talk about learning Finnish, the problem in Finland is not only maybe more resources in what we already have. The problem is that right now the how is not good. How Finland is teaching Finnish to immigrants is, as you said, it's not sufficient to make them part of the society, part of the labor market. And one thing that I think that municipalities can do to make people get job quicker is right now to develop what already exists right now, which is these language internships. Right now, there's the previously TEI office offered these language internships that people can go to a company or to an organization and work there in Finnish for 3 to 6 weeks. That's really short time, and then it gives them connections, it gives them actual practice, actual everyday spoken Finnish. But this must be developed. As I said, 3 or 6 weeks, it's not enough. And these are only offered in very limited professions. They have to be, this possibility have to be expanded. It gives networks and it gives skills. So this is, to my opinion, a very good solution. It's already there, just needs to be developed.
Yeah, and Lucia, Shreya has mentioned anxiety there, and I think that's something. Yeah,
it's a very good point. Anxiety. Yeah. It made me smile when I read that the Minister of Interior said that with these measures she want to put more responsibility to the foreigners or immigrants to be more active and pursue more careers. Well, I don't think that 3 months, especially in this current economic situation, is nearly enough time, because if we think that Finnish people who have ideally perfect command of the Finnish language, it takes at least 6 months or 1 year if they make redundant to find new position. How do you think that the foreigners can make it, including the language barrier? So it's just unreasonable.
Yeah, and very closely related to employment is this idea of integration, as we've kind of been touching on. I want to show another graphic here now. This is from Yle's election compass. So this graphic shows candidates' responses to a particular statement. And the statement was, my municipality should reduce spending on immigration integration services. And the answers range from completely agreeing with the statement to completely disagreeing with the statement, and the graphic shows a breakdown of how the candidates answers by party. Ran, if I come to you first, what kind of stands out to you from this graphic, or what do you think about the issue in general? How is Finland doing? How would you rate Finland in terms of integrating foreigners?
My words will be a bit harsh in that matter. So I would say that when you see it, you clearly see that there's only one party that the majority are against, supporting reducing the spending on immigrants, which is the Finns party. And this is, to my opinion, a deliberate strategy, because they want immigrants out of the country or pushed to the margins of society. Because when immigrants are in the margins of society, it's much easier to create stereotypes, to mobilize the population against them. And then the Finns party benefit, they get more votes. parties like the Finns party, they are against integration, they are against equality because they benefit from inequality. Inequality gives them more voters. So that's just cynical reality, to my opinion.
Sam, what stood out to you from this graphic or this issue in general?
Well, I don't think, as you said, I don't think that the graphic is particularly surprising. This is partly along the lines with what the parties have been saying for a very long time. I think that the parties who have told that the spending on this shouldn't be reduced take a more sort of long-term view of this issue. So basically, the way that I've heard this explained is that, sure, this might cost some money to provide upfront, but the payoff is sort of better in the long term, especially if you're able to get someone into a position where they can find employment with their skills, then they're paying taxes, then this sort of boosts the overall sort of sustainability of the system.
Yeah. Lucia, final word to you on this particular topic. This idea that well, I guess that getting a job and getting out there into society, it's a huge part of integrating, isn't it? So the two kind of go hand in hand there.
Of course.
Yeah.
I think that majority, as I said, of foreigners come here to find a job. So integration is learning the language is a part of the process then to eventually land a job. And actually, if we see the statistic of employment among immigrants compared to Finnish, the last statistic was issued in 2023, I think. The more men with foreigner background was employed compared to Finn. So immigrants want to come here, wants to work. So integration is part of the process to lead them to a job. But I just want to make another quick comment about what you were saying. Nothing new in this graphic, but I went actually to see the compass, what the candidate was saying in my municipality. Actually, I live in Karina, but Turku is the biggest hub. And I was checking what the candidate was saying about integration services, and it's so diverse, even inside each parties. So the candidates in that municipality, they can belong for Kokoomus, or they really have different opinion on the matter. Yeah. So then when it goes to municipality, it really goes down from candidate to candidate. Yeah,
it really splits parties. We're going to move on from the employment and integration section now, but we could actually dedicate the whole show to this. We're not going to, we should move on. We're going to move on to the topic of schools, which of course is another very important area of responsibility for your local municipality. And we're going to start this section with a question from Sama Zain.
I have one question to the Finnish municipalities. We now have clear research showing that children with immigrant backgrounds are falling behind, especially when it comes to learning Finnish. And behind those numbers are hundreds of families with real stories, sharing how the current S2 system is holding their children back from fully developing the language skills they need to navigate education in middle and high schools. We've also seen schools and teachers who recognize this problem and trying to make a change. So my question is, what should Finland do to address this issue? What concrete steps can they bring in to create a real, immediate change? Thank you.
Thank you, Zama, for that question. Lucia, what do you think?
I think this is a self-imposed problem because kids have an ability to learn languages that is phenomenal most of the time. So we are creating this system where we put kids that don't speak language as the first language into the secondary language. And then this track continues all over their study path. And they have I like when she wrote this LinkedIn post of a Finnish for dummies. Yeah. So they have really easiest language requirements, etc. But they don't push kids to actually reach that level of Finnish that can be really easily reachable in a year. So instead of continuous this separate, which leads then to separation problem, lack of integration of these kids with immigrant background, why don't we teach them Finnish intensively for a year, and then we switch them back to the class where it should belong with the rest of the pupils.
Yeah, a concrete measure. Browne, what do you think?
Well, this relates actually to what I said before, that Finland is not good in teaching Finnish people Finnish in a way that actually train them for society, and it is for adults, and this is for kids. And well, I'm coming from Israel. One may say that my country, we do some things wrong, but we definitely, because we are a country of immigrants, we have experience and knowledge of how to integrate people in society in terms of learning the language. Learning in Hebrew in Israel is a very, very organized institution. And then in Finland, there's just not enough, first of all, experience in this, and overall, institutional experience. And then because of this, there's not enough, to my opinion, good teaching that create enough teachers who knows how to teach S2, like the Finnish as foreign language, in a good way. What I would like to see is this is obvious that they need to be better teaching, but where do you bring the better teaching? I would like to see more people who actually learned Finnish as second language in the decision making in these areas, in the training of teachers, in the deciding how do we educate pupils and adults about school, because they can understand the pitfalls, and they can bring also ideas from their countries about how you do it better.
Absolutely. Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, I think two things to say about this. So the first is that in terms of the report, which the person who asked the question was stating, which is this University of Jyväskylä report, when you sort of go more into the details of that report, they basically found that the difference in performance in subjects that were not Finnish were mostly explained by people's reading fluency. So I think that that's the biggest investment in which schools can make, is to get people to read more. And then I think in terms of the municipal elections, one of the things to think about in terms of this language acquisition by children is to think beyond schools. So there are many other things which municipalities are responsible for, whether or not that's like after-school hobbies, whether or not that's how the schools actually handle things like bullying and social inclusion, how things like healthcare work, how it is that the parents can also find themselves like integrated into the labor market and access language courses themselves. So I think all of these things form part of a bigger picture, which have a clear impact on how children sort of acquire their language skills. And so like all of these things are important to think about when people are voting.
I just wanted to say one comment because, to correct myself, I don't have any criticism against Finnish teachers. I think that they are working hard as they can, and they have very good intentions. I'm more concerned about the policymakers on that level.
Okay, good. It was good to clarify. But okay, we've been talking about children speaking Finnish for now. We're going to talk about their parents speaking Finnish or not speaking Finnish, because we often hear from international parents who move here that they really struggle to keep on top of all the communication that they get from schools. And I think even for Finnish parents, it's a struggle, or it's a challenge to keep on top of everything, all the emails, the meetings, the Vilma messages, all of this. So it has been mooted that schools, or Finnish schools, should communicate in English as well. Finnish, Swedish and English. So my question to each of you, and maybe starting with you, Lucia, would be, is that a reasonable expectation, or is it the responsibility of the parent that moves here with the child, the school-going age child, to learn Finnish or Swedish to an extent that they can keep up with all of these, their child's education?
I can respond with a personal experience. Okay. When I moved to Finland, of course, I didn't speak any Finnish. Not that now I'm super fluent, but still struggling there. But I made a conscious decision of putting my kids into English schools. Okay. And one of the reasons was exactly that. I need to understand what's going on with my kids. I need to be able to speak and communicate in a language that I feel comfortable with. So my twins are 4 years old. They go to English-speaking kindergarten, and my 10 years old go to international school in Turku. So I knew that the problem would arise, and I decided. Okay. But I do understand that can be overwhelming, because it is overwhelming even in English by the messages, etc. But I think that other friends send their kids into Finnish schools, and nowadays, okay, I think you can really, with the support of AI, etc., you can really translate what's going on. So I don't think it's so overwhelming like it was before. But I think that, yes, schools can take in consideration, especially when you first move, that parents need a bit more support. Okay. So some kind of policy that how can we make this bridge between family and school closer? Yeah. And it's another matter of integration. So how can we close that gap? And yes, I think it is even down school to school and teacher to teacher to understand that, make a step.
Sam, what do you think about this one?
Well, yeah, I do understand that this is an issue that can be seen from many sides. And I mean, it is obviously the case in Finland that the official languages are Finnish and Swedish. And so, to what extent can we expect communications in language outside of that? It's usually always sort of provided on a best effort basis. I think one thing about this is to recognize that people have different levels of language ability. So it's not, I think we sometimes fall into this trap of thinking like, does not speak Finnish or speaks Finnish and nothing in between. And there is a very, very large in between. And so I think, this is one thing that schools and other services can sort of pay some attention to, at least in the way that they do their communication, is just think about the way that I'm phrasing this thing. Am I using a lot of complicated grammar or like word inflections, or can I say this in a simpler way? Yeah. Right. And that can actually go like a really, really long way, because, a lot of people are in that in between.
Ran.
I completely relate to what you said right now, because, for example, I understand Finnish, let's say normal Finnish, almost perfectly. If you'll speak to me hardcore Turun Murre dialect, I will not understand you. But speaking is another thing that requires courage, and I speak slower in Finnish. So I'm always for what I call language flexibility. If it's cool in the labor market, if people understand better, all Finnish or a lot of Finnish people understand English, but it's difficult for them to speak. But it's easier also for immigrants to understand Finnish than to speak it. So we can always find measures. But on the long term, I believe that parents and kids, if they want to be properly integrated in Finland, they need to learn Finnish. And the school, I believe that language flexibility eventually, if you don't only stick to English or stick to Finnish, you support the language development that eventually will lead to the integration of the parents, which is, and then the ability of the parents to follow what's going on in their kids' school.
Okay, we're going to move on very quickly. Actually, we have one last question in this section about schools and education. Something that we mentioned already is Finland's falling birth rate. I'm going to show a graphic up here on screen. So the graphic shows how Finland's birth rate has fallen quite dramatically from about the 1960s, when it was 2.6, to the most recent figures show that it's now at 1.5. And we've seen some Finnish municipalities come up with quite an interesting way of tackling this particular trend. It's called a baby bonus that the municipalities pay or offer to either couples who live in the area to have a child or children, or trying to attract people from other parts of Finland or other parts of the world to move there and have their children or start their family in the area. And these baby bonuses can be anything up to 10,000 euros, I think is one of the highest I've seen. Well, would a baby bonus convince you to move to the countryside somewhere, or what do you think about this as a policy, Sam, if I start with you?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to say about that chart is that this is a trend which is happening worldwide. So this is not something which is unique to Finland. And then as well, just on these questions of, you can either call them fertility bonuses or you can call them relocation bonuses. Yeah. They happen in sort of different forms. Usually these one-off payments, they're not particularly successful in retaining people in the area. Usually, when you look at patterns of sort of migration and settlement, the thing which is most important is participation in the labor force and labor demand, right? So whether or not you are actually going to end up with a sustainable career in that area. So I think if we want to promote more people living within regional areas, then the most important thing that you can have is the development of regional industry and regional employers, right? But that's also a cost and a trade-off that we would have to support. So, if this is something that you care about, then that's something which could influence your vote.
Last word to you, Ran, on this section, as you work with Familia.
Yeah, I would say that, you said that it happened worldwide, but I would correct and say that it happens in certain, let's say, countries, I would say countries that are more individualistic than communitarian in the way. And why is it happening, to my opinion? Well, I think you sent me recently a report by the working group of the ministry about this, and I agree with them. The problem is complex. There's not one thing that you'll do, definitely not baby bonus, that all of a sudden will make people make like 5 children. It's not going to happen. But what will make people feel here that they want to make more children is that if they will feel that families with children are thriving, that they are not having challenges. And in here, because I said it is an individualistic country, you don't have even families with like 100% Finnish, they don't have a lot of support in here. It's not that you get like in some other countries support from your wider families, from all of the friends. It's not seen as part of the community to raise children. So what I think is that the government not the government, but the public sector need to step up and start to provide not monetary support, but practical support, meaning help with children, helping with house chores, so people will see that parents actually thrive. They can leave the house sometimes, and then if they feel like, okay, having a child will not make my life very, very challenging, maybe I'll consider doing this.
Okay, yeah, much more concrete measure. Thank you again. We have to move on. Time is ticking. So as I said at the top of the show, Finland is holding 2 elections at the same time this month. Now, we've been discussing a lot of the responsibilities of municipalities, schools, education, jobs, etc. But of course, that's one of the elections. The other one is the county council elections, and that's kind of more focused on healthcare issues, social care issues, because the successful candidates will sit on these newly formed county councils. Just one very quick question, if I start with you, Lucia, that before we take a question from the audience, how do you think that Finland is doing this in this area, especially in terms of foreigners accessing the system, getting the help that they need? Because we often hear from people that they don't know where to go. They don't understand the Finnish system. Again, it's a language thing, but there's other issues there as well. Is it unreasonably difficult for people who move here from abroad to get the help they need?
I think it's complex. And it's complex for different reasons. One of the reasons is, of course, the language. And one other reason that Finland is not really a preventive care system. So foreigners do not understand when can I access to hospital, and or to they only go if they're really, really, really sick, and not ever to prevent themselves from getting sick. So this is one of the issues, and of course the problem is even how the health system respond to the needs. So one of the statistics said that one of the biggest problems of Finland is, of course, is cutting more and more on the healthcare, but is even the unmet needs of the patients. So that's one of the things that Finland struggled the most. So there is a longer waiting line. They don't know, and then there is even uneven service, because if you have an employee, you have the employer health system, which makes it even uneven. So unemployed people, like foreigners, for example, they don't have a good health system. So a lot of issues there.
Okay, Ron, what would you say?
Well, I think that the Finnish system is complex, but I wouldn't say that. I think that every every health system is complex. There are these bureaucratic giant with loads of branches. It will be always it's difficult for Finns, and it's difficult for people, of course, that immigrate to the country. What I think that should be done better is information and more, when I say information, not only online information, but also face-to-face interaction. This is unfortunately the opposite of the direction that Finland goes, that everything is in oma kanta, everything is in Maisa if you live in Helsinki, and they kind of figure it out by your own. And if you are an immigrant, if you are also a lot of Finns, it's very, very challenging for you. What they need to do is, first of all, people in the health sector, specifically nurses, should get more language education, but in English, in other languages, but also certain service and cultural education. For example, when you meet with an immigrant, he might need more context explanation, or she might need more of assurance in certain things. And it cannot be just, hey, immigrant, go and go to Omakanta and understand by yourself.
Work it out yourself.
Human relationship.
And one thing that is very, well, not unique to the Finnish system, but one feature of the Finnish system is that it's funded through these municipal taxes, and that's supposed to guarantee an equal access level of healthcare for everyone in that municipality. It's often cited by people who move here as one of the reasons for the decision, this universal healthcare. But that's not always the reality. We have another question here from the All Points North audience. This is Blair.
Since moving to Finland in 2022, our family has noticed a change in healthcare here. From inabilities to get appointments in public health clinics to long waits for specialized care, to declines in quality due to lack of resources. It seems that as the public sector is continually defunded and private reimbursements for private side care go up, that a separate but unequal system of care is being created, where those who have access to private care get faster, higher quality care than those who rely on the public system. With this in mind, what can well-being services counties do to address the problems in healthcare currently under their budget constraints? And are there any particular plans from any party that you think would address these issues?
Ran, what do you think about that, especially as Blair noted the current budgetary constraints?
Yeah, I think Blair hit it right on the head in that sense that, like, if you look on the programs of parties when it comes to health, all parties write a lot about this, and all parties have really good ideas in terms of what to do. All of them talking, like, there's no one party that will say we need to extend the waiting line. All of them talk about cutting the waiting line, about improving mental health. I don't think anyone will say otherwise. But exactly where the money comes for this, because these things cost a lot of money, that's the question. And no party, again, will talk about, hey, we want to raise a lot of taxes, or we want to put the money on the people who are sick to pay for this. This is not a selling point for voters. So you need to learn to read between the lines of candidates and party programs to understand what do they plan. And when you look on a party, on certain parties, let's say, if they talk a lot about competition between providers, and involving in the sense that giving services by the private sector and by the NGO sector, what they actually say, in fact, is moving the cost and the responsibility from the taxpayers as a whole, from the entire community, to the people who are sick. And these people, by definition, they have a reduced employment ability because they are sick with physical or mental health. I don't think that that's fair that those people will actually take the burden. I think that what we need to do is a societal responsibility and tax those that are, let's pick it straight, the really rich that are able to support the health of their communities.
Lucia, what do you think? Is Finland moving towards a two-tier system in health?
Well, it is indeed, because if these waiting lines are getting longer and longer, then people have no other choices or get like private insurances. And that's what I did when I moved to Finland. When I understood how the Finnish system was working, difficult to navigate, then I just pick up the private insurance. But I was lucky because I could. But what about unemployed people? People have lower income, what can they do? Yeah. We are just creating, as I said before, a really uneven health system.
Okay, one other question that arises out of this county council election is how much power a politician can actually have. Because of the Finnish system, it is actually possible for somebody to be a member of parliament, an MP, a municipal councillor, and now a county councillor as well. 3 offices in one. We're going to show a graphic here. The graphic is again from Yle's election compass, and it states that no one should be allowed to hold triple roles as MP, municipal councillor and regional councillor at the same time. And again, it's a breakdown of how the parties have voted for that. Just one more thing before I come to you, Sam. Finland has 200 MPs, 123 of them are standing in this election, in the municipal election. 39 of them, so 1 in 5, are standing in both elections. So this is certainly a question that how much power should a politician have?
Yeah, I think one way to look at it is power. I mean, certainly if you are from a different country where there's a greater separation between the sort of municipal, state, and national governments, and this looks unusual. I think one thing that's maybe a bit more unique about the Finnish system is that these municipalities and the welfare counties and then also the national government aren't really acting in opposition to each other. So it can sometimes be the case that a person sort of wearing multiple hats might be able to navigate things a bit more smoothly, or if they're sort of focused on one specific issue that spans different levels of government, they're able to sort of achieve those aims much more directly. I think I heard a really funny example the other day about municipalities where they wanted to do something with employment services, but their IT system doesn't enable them to do this because it's provided by the national government, and it's the national government's responsibility to develop this thing, and so on and so forth. And these are the types of things which, they can be solved much quicker if you have people sort of sitting in both roles. So I can definitely see that there's a trade-off. And yes, it does look kind of unusual, but there is sort of a reason why people do this.
Ron, what do you think about this very Finnish problem?
Yeah, I agree with you that there's definitely a trade-off. On one hand, yes, there's clear disadvantages of the fact that a person can be in different positions, because the reality is that a lot of these people who serve in different positions, let's say if they are members of parliament, some of them are even members of the European Parliament and then members of the city. Much of their time is in Brussels. The reality is that they are actually not serving in the city, but they're deputies. So this is what called in politics, in political science, we call it democratic deficit. You vote for something, you get something else. This is not the way the democracy should function. But the parties, what they say, justifiably, that if we don't let these big names, these big politicians to vote, then much less people will actually vote in these elections, which is also a democratic problem if the turnout will crash. My solution to this, I warn, quite bold. Make one election day for Finnish internal politics. It will be an election day for national politics and for local politics. In that day, if you vote, you have to vote for both elections, but no one can run in both elections. Cancel county elections. Counties should be chosen by people who get elected to the municipalities. And then this kind of solves, to my opinion, both problems, because it gets, first of all, they turn out high, and then at the same time, we actually also cut, a lot of spending is being cut. And what I think that should be done with all of these resources that become available and all of this time that becomes available because people need to campaign less, make more direct democracy. Finland has enough voting for people, not enough voting for ideas, for issues. For people need to be more aware of the issues. Referendum, participatory budgeting, deliberative democracy. There's many to do instead of just voting for people and forget about it.
Okay, you're proposing a kind of super election day.
Yeah.
2 elections aren't enough this time around. We want 4 or 5 in one.
No, just 2. Just 2.
Well,
like Sweden is doing it.
Sweden has the same system. That's right. Unfortunately, we need to move on to our very last subject. Of course, there's so many other topics to talk about. We've talked about it in depth here, but there's so many on a local level, and there's other things that we didn't get to, unfortunately, because we didn't have time. Do please check out our coverage at yle.fi/news, and we also have an election compass there. If you're not familiar with the election compass, we try to, or it attempts to align people with candidates who match their views. But before we go, I do have one last question for each of you, and I'll start with you, Lucia. How do you think that this election will go? What are we likely to see when the results start coming in on Sunday week?
Yeah, as Sam said, this election is even about how the current government is performing. So people are telling the current government, send the message, like how it's going. But I have to say that in history, usually when there is a crisis, people tend to go to the farthest, vote to the really far right or far left. So we need to see, are people standing still on the far right, supporting more the perussuomalaiset, or are they going far left? This is something that I cannot predict, but I'm very interested to see.
Okay. Sam, how do you think it will go on election night?
Well, I think we only need to look at the EU elections, which happened just a year ago, where there was also a very big upset. And I think one critical difference that is going to happen this time around, especially in the municipal elections, is that we have as I said, there's a greater number of candidates who have an immigration-related background who are running. There's a greater number of people of immigrant background, particularly sort of those who discuss these things on LinkedIn, who are sort of more aware of their role in politics. And I think also those networks as well. So, probably people who listen to the show are likely to vote. But I think what is also likely to happen is people are going to talk to their friends about voting. People are going to, those friends are going to talk to their friends about voting as well. So I think that this time around, there will probably be a greater turnout amongst immigrant voters. And I think that could have a substantial impact within some municipalities about who actually gets elected and sort of what the most important items on the agenda are.
It would be great to see a bigger turnout for sure. Ran, very last word.
Yeah, I think that these elections will show Finland that is divided more than ever, because the results of elections in Finland has been quite divided for a long time, and to some extent justifiably, because municipalities and cities are different. But now with the extended power, it will become even more clear that there's difference between counties, between regions in Finland, and this is also because of inequalities between regions. I don't know if many of you know, but like how it's called, Etelä-Savo, the GDP is South Savo. The GDP of it is the GDP of Uusimaa is almost double of Etelä-Savo. So when there is inequality, there'll be a lot of conflict. There will be a lot of tensions, and I'm worried about where it will bring eventually Finland to. We need to have much more equality at the same time with these decentralizations that are coming.
Okay, it will be very interesting to see, and we will of course be covering it all over at Yle News. Quick reminder that election day itself is Sunday the 13th of April, and advance voting has of course already started and continues until the 8th next Tuesday. But that really is all we have time for this All Points North election special. I want to say a really huge thank you to our panellists today, and also to Sama Zain, Blair Stone Schneider and Shreyas Ramachandran Srinivasan for contributing their questions. And of course, last but not least, a big thanks to our audience, both Areena and on the All Points North podcast. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.